Okay, so this first story is about the time I got a flat tire. It's the flat tire story. So what happened was we were flying to Mombasa to get to Diani, which is this really awesome beach town. So we land in Mombasa, our plane is delayed, so we get in pretty late, around like 11 p.m. And then Scott's buddy Charles was driving us, and he picks us up at the airport, and we have to go pick up another friend. So we go straight into kind of the urban living of Mombasa, and we get off the main road, and it's literally like every street is a back alley, and the roads are terrible, like potholes. The car's just like on its side, up and down. And by this point, I'm already pretty exhausted, and I'm a little anxious just because there's no street lights. It's like pitch black. The car keeps on bottoming out like every 20 seconds. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, you know, what are the odds this tiny little car gets a flat tire? Charles is like, he's this Rasta dude. He's like, oh man, I think we got a flat tire, man. And so we get out, and sure enough, it's just flat. And he's like, don't worry, I have a spare. And he pulls out this extremely tiny, it's like a clown car, spare tire. And they start putting on, it's pitch black, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this probably isn't the best place to be. Luckily, they flagged down a boda, which is one of the motorbike drivers, and the guy sits there and he just shines his light. And Scott explains to me that like those dudes, no one will mess with us if they're with us, because those guys ride in packs essentially, and if you mess with one, you mess with all of them. So they're saying this to make me feel comfortable, and I'm like, okay. Charles, the driver, he can sense I'm a little tense, so he's like, hey man, don't worry, you're safe. And I was like, cool. He's like, but don't wander off. And I was like, I remember thinking to myself, like, those are two very competing things. You told me I'm safe, but you also said very sternly I can't wander off. So we put the spare on, and we start heading to the ferry. We have to get to the ferry. It's about midnight now. We're at this river. We're the first on the ferry, and we're crossing the river, and the thing's packed. There's probably like, honestly, 100 cars, even though it's like midnight. And the ramp comes down, and we just floor it, and all of a sudden, she's like, the tire comes off the treads, and we're just driving on the rim. And meanwhile, like 35 to 40 people just swarm our car. Cars behind us are like honking, trying to get around us. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, cool, great. Charles gets out, runs back onto the ferry, and he comes back with a new spare tire. And apparently he knew someone on the ferry and bought a spare tire off of him. So we put the new tire on, and lo and behold, it doesn't fit. But we just like crank it on anyway, and we continue driving, and the thing's just wobbling. So we're doing like 35 miles an hour. And we leave the city, and we're on the way to the beach town, and there's just a stretch of road where it's pitch black, literally no towns, no lights. And Charles was like, okay, we gotta make sure the tire stays on, because if it falls off here, we have to pull over, we'll probably get robbed. At this point, like, I'm so exhausted and so cranky that I'm thinking to myself, like, hey, you know, getting robbed would just be like another point in the journey on the way home. But we didn't have to pull over, and we didn't get robbed, and we made it at like 1 or 2 in the morning back to the hostel. And that's the end of that story.
Did it end a little stronger?
Yeah.
Not fade out, but like, what's your punctuation?
Okay, I'll do the punctuation. So long story short, 2 flat tires in the same night, and they killed my friend Hank. Just kidding. Nobody got killed or robbed. And it just goes to show you, you can get multiple flat tires in places you might think are very dangerous, and you're gonna be fine. You just need a boda to follow you, and just need to not wander away from the car.